So let's see how we will create, read, update, and delete data in Node.js. So first of all, we need tools. So the first thing we're gonna need is Node.js. So go to nodejs.org/n/download and select your platform. The next tool that we need is Compass, MongoDB Compass. So in this URL, on your right, you'll have a click button. The next tool we need is community, MongoDB community. So on this URL, just go and download this tool right here. So let's start by creating our directory. So let's create a directory. You can create anything. Let's go to that directory. Let's initialize the Node.js project with the yes flag. Let's open the project in our editor. So you should have package.json file. So this file will containing the libraries or modules that we'll be downloading or installing later. So let's create a file. Let's call it index.js. So this is our main file. So from the terminal, let's install Express. So the installation is complete. So let's require the Express package and get an app from it. So when you call this module, get an app. So let's say app.listen. So the first argument should be the port. Let's record it here. Let's say port to be like 3000. So let's say listen to this port. The next will be a function that will be called when the app will be listening on this port. So we can say listening on port 3000. So that's it. So the next thing to do is to connect to the database. So we need Mongoose for that. So from the terminal, let's install Mongoose. So the installation is complete. From the top, let's require Mongoose. And say mongoose.connect. So the first thing we need to pass here is the string, the connection string. So the connection string, I'm going to say MongoDB ://localhost / the name of the DB. So let's say the name of the DB is app or Node.js app. So that's the name of the DB. And then if that will be successful, let's run this function right here. So we'll be successful, we'll log something on the console saying connected. And if there will be an error, we'll log to the console. We'll use this function, we'll pass the function, and we'll log to the console saying connection failed. Save the changes. So from the terminal, let's type node, and the name of the application, the file is the index. This is the main file. So node index.js. And yeah, we are connected to the database. So this is the basic code that we need to start any Node.js application. So we need to register users, delete, update, and all those operations. So where should we put all those code? I think it's not a good practice to put all those code here, because maybe next you're gonna have to register new posts, users. So all those things in one file to be very complex and dirty. So we need to create a new folder. Let's call it routes. There will be the routes. So in this tutorial, we're going to have an example of registering with dealing with users. So let's create a new file. Let's say users.js. So in this file is where we'll write all the code for creating, reading, all those operations about a user. So that's a good practice. So back from our file, so we need to delegate any operation that concerns users to this module just created right now. So we need a middleware. So a middleware, as the name suggests, a middleware, this is a program or lines of code or a program or functions that are between by the time you call this application, or by the time it's between when you call the application and when the operation that you wanted to be executed before it's executed. So let's say app use. This is a middleware. So whenever we have /API/users, we want to delegate to these users. So let's install these users right here. So from the current folder, we go to routes and then users. And then we pass it here. Save the changes. So when we have any operation dealing with that starts with the endpoint API/users, we delegate all these capabilities to this module users. So it is in this file that we need to handle all the CRUD operations. So we need to create a router, say express router like this. So in this router we'll have, this router has methods like post for creating new items. So you should not say like, you should not create an app like this. Because if you create an app like this, like the way we did in this file, you will be having another instance of this app. It won't be the same as the one we have in the index.js. So don't do that. So this is where we'll be creating new users. So at the end, let's export it first. So post is for creating new data. So this, we shall start by passing a string. So remember the endpoint will be API/users. So for creating a new users, we don't need any information. So apart from /API/users, we just need /. And then we have a function request response goes to this block of code. So this is it. So this is where we'll need to write the code for creating a new user. But how will we do this? So we need to talk about schema. So what's a schema? A schema is the structure of how a user will be. So we need to create a model. So let's create models. It should be on the root of the project. And let's create user, singular user for model. So we need mongoose. Say mongoose.model. So you give the name of the model, which is user, not the uppercase of the first letter. And the next thing is the schema right here. We need to provide the schema. So it will be new mongoose.schema and as an object. So this is where we're gonna write the structure of a user. So you expect a user to have things like name, username, and password. So let's say name. So the type of the name is string. Name may have a min length of, let's say, 3 characters and a max length of, let's say, 50 characters. Let's trim it, say trim to true. You also may have a username. Let me just paste this. Say username. Type is gonna be a string. A min length might be 3. We're gonna trim it. So that's it. And the next thing we need is password. So password, the type is it's gonna be a string, not the type of the string. This is a class. Start with the capital letter, string. I'm gonna say a min length to, let's say, 6 characters and max length of, let's say, 1024, because it's not the actual password that is stored, so we'll have to hash it, the password, and the characters will be absolutely longer than the one the user registered with. So as a validation, just to validate that a new user that is being created should have all this, we have to pass the required. Let's say all these are required. You pass a boolean like true. Right here again, required. You say true. Save the changes. So mongoose.model, we were creating a model. Let's put the model user, and from the bottom, let's export it. Let's export the model. So this is the structure of our user that will be created. So from our routes here, let's create the new user. Let's import the one that we just created, this model. Before that, maybe in your application you want username to be unique for every user. So we need to check that the person who is creating his or her account has a unique username. So let's say user equals to, so let's find if there's a user with that username. So we'll say user models. We're gonna use that model and say find one. The first argument is a filter. So let's pass in an object. So let's say username to be, it will come from request.body.username. So let's check if the username that's being provided exists. So this is an asynchronous function, so we need to await it. The results won't be immediate, so wait it and let's mark this function as async. So let's check if user is truthy. So if there will be no other user with the same username, the return value will be undefined. Otherwise, it will be the user object. So if the user is truthy, that means it's not undefined. We're gonna return, say, response.send. So we're gonna send back to the client with the status code 400, meaning bad request. That means the data they provided us, it's not good. And then for the status, this should be the status. So the status 400 and send this message. You can say the username already exists. Save the changes. So when we get here, this means the user with that username doesn't exist. So you're gonna say user to be this user, new user, and we pass an object with the values for the name Let's say it will be request dot body dot name, username as well, and password. So this is it. The next thing we need to do is we need to hash or encrypt the user password. So we'll need a library called bcrypt for that. So let's install it. Let's install the bcrypt at the top. So first thing, before we encrypt the password, we need to generate salt from this library. Generate salt. Let's place a number like 10, and this is the salt that we need to use to encrypt the password. Let's await the process. So it's gonna use bcrypt dot hash and pass the user password, the one we have just saved for this user right here, this password. And the second argument is the salt. We'll use this salt. Await the process, and the result is the encrypted password, user password. So we say we modify user password to be the value that has just been returned from this function. So let's save this user. Say user.save. Let's save it to the database. Await the process. And after saving the user, we'll return the user to the client. So response.send. It's not a must for us to state the status of the operation. By default, it will be 200. So let's just send the user. And this is how we'll create a new user. So back from the terminal, the code we have just created is not updated to the terminal. So we have to stop it and restart it. So we don't want to keep restarting manually. So there's a module for that. So from the terminal, let's install NodeMon. This module will be restarting our application automatically on changes on our code. So from the terminal, let's drop it and say NodeMon index.js. You can say index.js or just leave it out like that. But automatically it will look for a file by the name index.js. So whenever we save changes, it will restart our application automatically. So that's the benefit. So one more thing. Right here, we are assuming username should be unique. So let's go to our model. Here on the username, let's set unique to true. So with this, all the username will always be unique. So let's test the application. So before testing our application, let's have a middleware here for body parser. Say express.json. Call that function. So this will be able to read our data that will be sending to this application. So if you don't have, we're gonna use Postman. So if you don't have Postman, you can download it or use the online one, the Postman. When you open Postman, select here post. This is the method, and type the URL like http/, don't write https. So the way it is like here. From the body, let's select raw, and right here let's select JSON. So let's start by providing name. Use the double quote as the string. So let's say the name will be like this. So this is how it is going to be. After this, let's press this send button. Let's go to the body and see what you have returned. So this is the function, this is the data that we have returned. So name, username, and password. So you see, this is the hashed password. So you cannot get the password of the user. So we don't have to provide this back. Let's go and fix it. Let's install a library called NodeJS. So this will help us handpicking data from an array. So let's import it right here. Let's say let's name it underscore. So before we send the user, let's handpick what we want. So let's remove user, say underscore dot pick. So from this user, we want to pick some number of objects. So for every object, we're going to pass it as a string. So we need to pass name and the username. So password will not be part of it. So let's save the changes. So let's clean some code here. So let's use the same logic here. We want to extract name, username, and password from rec.body. So let's get rid of this, or let's duplicate it first. Let's get rid of this. Let's say underscore dot pick from request.body. We're gonna take name, username, and password. So this is it. So we don't need this one anymore. Back to Postman. Let's try creating a new user with the data we just created some few minutes ago. So let's send. Back here to the body, you see the username already exists. So you cannot create another user with the same username. So that unique property that we set out to our schema is the one doing this. So let's try creating a new user with a different username. Let's say this one. So let's send. So this is what we got. We got name and username. We forgot to pass the ID. Maybe in your application you'll need an ID. So let's come here and add ID underscore ID. Save the changes. Let's go back to this one. Let's create a new user with this one. Yeah, this is the ID that we have been provided by Mongoose, not MongoDB, Mongoose. So this is the ID that you use on your client application. Okay, so far with this code you have written, if I pass let's say 2 characters for a name or less password, our application will break because we don't have functions to validate the information that's coming from the client application. So maybe that will be another video that I will create. If you want to know how, just leave it a comment so that I know someone really wants it, and subscribe so that when I post it, you'll be notified. So let's continue. So let's see how we will get a user that's reading. So let's say router dot get. So it depends with how you want to get the user. Do you want to get him using the ID or the username? Because either of the two, they are unique to a particular user. So in this tutorial, I will be using the ID. So the URL will be /API/user/ the ID of that user that we want to get for a specific. So Okay, so getting a user, it will have two implementations: for getting all the users and for getting just a single user. So let's start by getting all users. So the URL for getting all users will be /API/users/. So right here, the string will be just slash, then a function request response goes to this block of code. And so let's find for the users. So let's say you're gonna use our model user.find and pass an object as a filter. So in this object, we're not gonna write any filter. So you're just gonna fetch all of them. So let's await the process and store the result as users. And we need to return to the client. So we need to send users. So this is it. So let's test our application again. Oh, before that, I have forgotten, since we have a wait here, we need to mark this function as async. So back to Postman, let's test. So change the method to get with the same URL and click send. And go to the body and let's see what we have here. So these are the users that I've created. Some I've created before recording this video. So you'll see the users we have created so far. So these are the users with their hashed passwords. You can also eliminate the password if you want. So that's it. So let's see how we'll get a particular user. So it's going to be router.get. The URL will be slash with an ID. So in this tutorial, just be assuming that you'll pass the ID as part of the URL. So request response goes to this block of code. So we need to find the user with this ID. We're gonna say user dot find by ID, and then we pass the ID. So the ID that's right here, where we use the colon to separate it. So this colon says this is the ID. So we're gonna say request dot params for parameters dot ID. So that's where we're gonna access that ID. So we need to await it, mark the function as async, and then this will be the user. So there are two situations here: either the user exists or not. So if the user is undefined or doesn't exist, we're going to return response.status 404, which means not found. So we're going to say the user does not exist. Otherwise, we're going to return that user. Save the changes. So in this, I will not test this. I think you know how to test already. So I will just assume I'm right. I will check if I will be wrong and then correct the errors. So this should be it. So the next thing we need to do is to update a particular user. So let's see how we will update a user. So to save time, let's duplicate this and say put. There's two ways for updating. There's patch and put. So in this tutorial, I'm just going to use put. So updating, you have to provide an ID. It's a particular user. So before updating, we need to check if the user exists truly. Okay, so if the user doesn't exist, I'm going to send this. So in this tutorial, let me just assume the user wants to update his or her name. In your application, maybe they want to update their username. If they're about to update their username, you will have to look for any user that exists with the username. And that's logic's right here. So I won't be repeating myself, but you get the logic. So let's assume that this user will be updating their name. So let's say user.name will be equals the body.name. After that, we'll have to save the user.save, await the process, and then we need to send that user back to the client. So that's it. Let's see finally how we'll delete a particular user. Let's say router dot delete, so to be /id, and pass a function like request response goes to a block of code. So we will use our model once more, user dot find by id and delete. There's also and remove, so let's go and delete. So we're going to find by id. Let's send a request dot params dot id. That's where the id is. So we're going to await the process. There's also another way to delete. It's user dot find one and delete. So you can pass a filter here. Let's say id with underscore id, and then say request dot params dot id. So this is also another way to delete a user. So whichever one you want, that's it. Then you're gonna return the user that's deleted. Let's say user, and you can return it to your client. Save changes. So this is it. So the one thing I want you to know before I finish this video is, whenever you test your whatever this your endpoints, let's say about like put on your body, if you have one property like this, don't put comma at the end. If you put comma at the end, it won't work. Your app is gonna crash. So that's it. So since we have a wait here, let's mark this function as async. Don't forget that, as async. So let's see our code, how it looks like. Let's clean it a little bit. So maybe right here we're gonna have another endpoints like these ones, but with this tutorial we're not gonna have any. So these ports, let's see if you can set it from the terminal. So let's check if it's set from the terminal. So process.environment.db. So if db is set as the environment variable, we're gonna use that, else we're gonna use this one. So this 3000. So you're gonna go and change from the terminal the port and it updates. So same thing. Let's say same thing as this one. Let's say const db for database to be process.environment.db. Oh, I'm sorry, this should be port, not db. So db should be this one. So if this set, use that one, and otherwise let's use this one. So let's cut it and paste it right here, and then use it dynamically right here like db. Save the changes. So I think this is it. So if you have any question, or you want me to solve any other problem other than this one, or want me to make it a little bit complex or explain more, you can leave a comment so that I know. And when you do, be sure to subscribe, because that's how you'll be notified when I post that video. And if you've learned a single thing or a two, I would really love for you to leave a like so that I know I really helped someone out there.